Alexandra, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing really awesome. Are you ready to get started?
I am.
Perfect. I will let you take it away. How are you doing? You have your slides up, everything good to go?
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Perfect. Um, Same with our last two sessions. If anyone has questions for Alexandra, please don't hesitate to put them into the comments. We will look to answer them toward the end of her session today. And Alex, do you have any contact details at the end of your thing for how people can get a hold of you?
I do, yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. I will let you take it away.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and I'm going to share the kind of the real meta media buying best practices for fashion brands. So, to honor the conventions of meta and meta ads, I'm going to start this off with a strong hook. Was Miranda Priestley right? Are fashion brands really different than other types of brands? And the answer is yes, because most brands find product market channel fit once, but fashion brands do it every time they drop a new collection. And some brands drop a new collection every week. So this is not for the faint of heart when it comes to media buying, because you really need to find that product channel market fit to get success and scale. So before we dive into the content, I'll give you a quick 101 on who I am. My name's Alex Greifeld. I've been working in e-com and digital marketing for over a decade, mostly focused on fashion, footwear, and accessories brands. Most recently, I was at Coach Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman, aka Tapestry, and I've worked for every brand of every size and every funding model. I would encourage you to, if you have questions, tweet them at me, because just in case we don't have time to cover them here, I'll go back on Twitter and answer all your questions after the presentation. So when I'm talking about a fashion brand, what exactly is it that I'm talking about? It's not just a brand that sells clothing and has a runway show. When I'm talking about a fashion brand, I'm talking about brands that launch new deliveries of product every 3 months or less. So as I mentioned, some brands drop new product on site every week. Many items sell out and are then discontinued. So it's seasonal product more than it's evergreen product. And there's a broad assortment with shallow inventory buys. So a cosmetics brand might have a hero product and 5 supporting products, and they buy really deep into all of those products. But a fashion brand will launch a collection with 25 different styles and buy inventory quantities so that they know they have a good chance of selling out at the end of the season. So home goods brands, athletic goods brands, and even brands that are uncool and are, mailing catalogs to your grandma, those can all be considered fashion businesses in this framework. So it's hard to build traditional marketing funnels when your product only sticks around for a few months. When you think about conventional direct marketing advice or digital performance marketing advice, you're really focusing in on creative. You're trying to figure out what are the angles that are going to appeal to your customer most. And then you really lean into and iterate on those angles, and you build them out throughout your advertising and your landing pages and your emails and all of your touch points. So it's kind of like setting course once and then doing all of these little iterations to really maximize your performance. But if you're a fashion brand, you have, you have 500 different items on your site. Like, are you going to run that playbook for every item on your site? No, like that's not possible. And the return on effort isn't there because you're going to sell out of all that stuff. So you have to do things a bit different, because otherwise, you'll really be spinning your wheels and it will be hard to find traction. So to succeed, you do need some consistency in your product assortment as a fashion brand. And that is where core product comes into play. And without core product, a fashion brand cannot succeed, because people need to know that they can come back and kind of get what they're looking for every time they come back. Core doesn't have to be a single product. It can be a best-selling product that doesn't sell out, so it's on replenishment. Think about like duck boots from LL Bean. You know that almost any time of year you go to their site, you're going to be able to buy their LL Bean boot. It can also be something the brand is known for. So I have a screenshot of an email from Reformation up here. They're kind of known for the place where if you're like mid-20s to mid-30s and you have to go to a lot of weddings, that's where you buy a dress to be a wedding guest. So that's something that they lean into and they always have on offer. And then it can just be a tribe or a vibe. So think about Hot Topic. Like if you, if you were growing up in the suburbs in the 90s and early 2000s and you were goth, you knew you were going to Hot Topic. So if any of these businesses pivoted away from that suddenly, it would be really hard for them to maintain the efficiency of their ad spend because their audience would completely change. Like if Hot Topic started selling Lilly Pulitzer, their existing customer base wouldn't come back and their modeled audiences would just be totally confused and not convert. So kind of the number one rule or the number one best practice of marketing for a fashion brand is promote your core and promote your best sellers and put those front and center in your marketing. And marketers typically don't have control over the assortment, but just be aware and educate internally that you have to maintain that core business or else you won't be able to acquire customers efficiently. So now I'll get into 4 media buying and direct marketing best practices that don't work for fashion brands and what you guys should do instead. And these will be presented by some AI generated media buying gurus. These are things you just hear a lot on Twitter and online and in conferences, not attributed to any single person, but I thought it would be funny to kind of put a face to a phrase here. The first one is creative fatigue does not exist. You just need a banger ad. Like this is the idea that creative fatigue isn't a thing, your creative just isn't good enough. But for fashion brands, that's just not the case because many products have planned obsolescence. They sell out and go out of stock and don't come back. Your banger ads typically work so well in a fashion brand because they're driving demand for a specific product that's featured in the ad. So when your inventory goes away, your performance will go away too. Your banger ads will die when the product sells out. So what do you do instead to create some stability within the account? The first thing is dynamic product ads or DPA. You're probably all very familiar with this, but you essentially let Facebook ingest your entire product catalog and then they match the right product to the right person on the platform. And so as things sell out, they drop out of the catalog and that prevents you from the ups and downs of featuring something in an ad, having it do really well and then having it sell out. So a few tips to get the most out of DPAs. The first is that the Facebook algorithm can become really biased towards lower prices and towards certain categories within your assortment. When I was at Coach and Kate Spade, those two brands sold everything from keychains to leather jackets, like everything from a $25 product to a $1,000 product. And so what we saw initially was that the $25 products or like the lower end of the assortment was getting the most airtime on DPA and the most conversions, but Facebook was optimizing towards the average order value of the entire site. So a lot of those conversions were not profitable. So if you do have a catalog that spans this many price points, I would recommend that you create several versions of the catalog for different price tiers. So you have one catalog that's under $200 and one catalog that's over $200. Your specific strategy will depend on your own pricing strategy. And you can also just exclude the lower price points altogether if you can't make them profitable. And then the second thing is testing campaign imagery or user-generated content instead of your e-commerce images in the catalog. That's something that I've seen can be really, really effective. And you do typically have to work with a third-party vendor to execute that. So in addition to DPA, there's another strategy that you can use to avoid hot item syndrome, which is when you have a banger ad that dies when you run out of stock. And that is to create full funnel category focused ad sets. So within a single ad set, you put in a variety of different creative types that each they each serve a different function. And some of them, like in platforms, some of them may perform better than others. Like some assets might be the traffic drivers, some assets might be the conversion drivers, but you want to evaluate the performance at the ad set level, because without the traffic drivers, there would be no performance or no conversions. So you have top of funnel assets, which are really about driving efficient traffic at scale. And those are like your formats that are more inspired by organic content and really drive a lot of click-through. Then you have your middle of funnel assets that are highlighting specific products or the overall product narrative that you're trying to tell, and also providing social proof. So this is where you throw in your influencer UGC content if you have it. And then bottom of funnel, throw in a DPA ad in there as well. And it can be tailored to the product story you're trying to sell, or it can be full feed. So you don't segment these out in any way. You just put them all in a single ad set and let the algorithm allocate budget accordingly. But it helps your demand. You're basically driving demand for a more diverse set of products versus just a single product that's going to sell out immediately. So the next best practice that doesn't work for a fashion brand, the creative does the targeting. So it works, but in a very specific way for fashion. For fashion brands, you can say that the art direction does the targeting. That doesn't mean that you have to run, professional high gloss photo shoots and all of your advertising, but calling out your customer by name for a fashion brand is kind of, it's a little bit alienating and defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do. So what I mean by this is that you need to strike a balance between explicit call outs and your brand credibility. So a lot of what you'll see in performance creative is this kind of thing where it's like, if you're this type of person, stop scrolling. If you're over 50 and have dry skin, stop scrolling. If you hate cooking because it's messy, then stop scrolling. Like, this works. There's no denying that this works. But, going back to the Hot Topic example, if you're, a teen, like an alternative teen, and you get a TikTok and it's like, if you're a goth, stop scrolling, like that just doesn't work. It's kind of like a credibility killer. So you can use your creative to target different audiences, but you just have to do it implicitly instead of explicitly. Think about the models that you're featuring. Think about the specific products within your assortment that you're featuring, the settings, and then the different use cases, like dresses for weddings, shoes for travel, things like that, where people are kind of in market with a specific use case in mind. That's another way to make your creative do the targeting without sacrificing credibility. And then aesthetic language and tone can also be its own form of targeting. And this is something that I've seen prove itself out multiple times in different accounts that I've managed. When you're running creative that has like a QVC infomercial format that's feed friendly and that sometimes has more of like a traditional catalog aesthetic, that tends to get impressions delivery from Gen X and boomers, like audiences over 45. Whereas if you're running creative that's kind of TikTok format, so like the quick cuts, the ASMR, all of those TikTok creative conventions, you're focusing on reels and vertical video and things that were shot on an iPhone and look a bit more like raw and spontaneous. That tends to get more impressions delivery and interaction from Gen Z and millennial like audiences under 45. So this is another way that you can layer on creative targeting without being really explicit about it. So then the next best practice for media buying that doesn't necessarily work for fashion brands is just go broad. So broad targeting only works for broad products. And these are both images of runway looks from Comme des Garçons, which is, it's actually a huge brand. It's a Japanese brand. It's been around for decades. They don't actually have an e-commerce site, but imagine trying to sell this on Facebook with broad targeting. Like it just wouldn't work. So typically what I find is that if you're selling product that's your average price point is under $250 and the audience that you're targeting is pretty broad, your product's pretty trend driven, then you can go right to broad and like it will work. But if your product is more expensive and your positioning is more niche, I often recommend that brands start with this audience stack approach so that they're able to build up to broad targeting and get some learnings. And then also just build kind of like a stable base of profitable customer acquisition before they really start experimenting. So I recommend an audience stack where when your daily campaign budgets are under $500, you're starting with a 10% best customer lookalike audience. So those are people in your customer file who have at least 2 lifetime orders and they're in the top 50% of last 12-month LTV. Then as you're scaling budget up to $500 to $1,000 a day, you can expand and add another ad set with an interest stack. So this is just interests and demographics relevant to your category and price point. And then once you're up to spending $1,000 to $2,000 or more a day, that's when you can stack on broad and potentially add on gender targeting if relevant. Once you have this going and you have consistent performance and you're hitting the KPIs that you want to hit, then you can start testing into like the true like broad, no targeting exclusions, higher scale spending, because it really is hard to see the results that you want or like get an understanding of what's truly possible with broad targeting without spending a pretty significant amount of money relative to your AOV. So the next best practice that doesn't work for fashion brands, a landing page will always outperform your homepage, your category page, etc. So I really haven't found this to be true for any of the brands that I've worked with in the fashion space. Landing pages can potentially work for core product, but other products sell out too fast. It's not worth the effort of building a landing page around it. The way that landing pages work is they use all of these different marketing and framing techniques to really build up like this enthusiasm and energy behind the purchase. And then they direct it into a really focused CTA where it's like you click once, you're at the checkout, and then you're out of there. That doesn't really work for fashion because typically you have to select at least a color and a size. So that kind of distills some of the energy. And then you're also, unless you're selling core product, the person may not even like what you're featuring and they may want to browse around. So it's like this format just kind of doesn't work for fashion as a category. So what I would recommend that you try instead is first, like lowest lift, send your campaigns to the bestsellers page. Bestsellers, when you put them in your ads or use it as your landing page, that's almost always going to drive the highest conversion rate. Then once you get a grip on what your top performing creatives are, you can send them to a hidden bestsellers page that you build out, but you take the products in the ads and you sort them up to the top. And then finally, you can test a new customers version of your homepage. So what a lot of fashion brands do is they feature a lot of new arrivals on the homepage. The new customers version of the page is where you're really highlighting bestsellers more so than new arrivals, and really making a clear statement about who you are and what you offer. So the last best practice, make ugly ads. So I love Barry, and I actually agree with him. I'm not about to say that this doesn't work. I'm just saying that we need to modify the approach a bit. And I think he's speaking later on in the day. So I definitely encourage you to go and watch his talk, because I make ugly ads is I would say yes, and for fashion brands, it's a yes and. So make ads that look like your customers' organic feed, stories, and reels. What I put in the background here is the organic feed of iSwoon, who is a really popular fashion and interiors influencer. If you're selling an aspirational product, the feeds of your audience are probably they're going to have a lot of this type of content in them. Like, it's going to be a mix of friends and family, and then some of this really aspirational stuff. So what that means in practice is you want to match your brand's UGG factor to your brand's aspiration factor. If you have a higher price point, if you have a higher fashion positioning, or just a generally aspirational positioning, you want to create content that looks like something an influencer would post in their stories. So like, if you look at these two examples, the one on the left, it looks like a photo that someone, took in a restaurant bathroom after a few drinks. Like, it doesn't mean that it's not like fun and spontaneous and sexy, but it doesn't look like professional photo shoot. So like, that's something that strikes that balance between raw and aspirational. Same for the photo on the right. Like, it just looks like something that someone, spontaneously shot and threw in their story, but it still sells the product. If your brand has a broader positioning, a lower price point, then you can tread into the waters of like the truly ugly ads. So the screenshots I pulled here are both from shapewear brands, and you see this a lot more with, I guess, like more functional based fashion brands, like in that space where they're borrowing more of those infomercial conventions, or like they're not thinking as much about lighting or all of those. It really just looks like something that like your wacky retired aunt would post on Facebook. So in general, make ugly ads is a best practice you should follow, but you just have to think about how you apply that to your unique situation. And that is it. Hey, it's Alex P is my Twitter handle. If you guys have any questions about what I just shared, I encourage you to tweet me about it, and I'll answer them. My website is nobestpractices.co. I have some more long form content on there as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alexandra. We had two questions come in. One from Jess Bachman. Did you use an AI photo in slide like 24, or was that an actual photo? Jess is asking about that.
I think slide 24 was there. So no, that was really Barry, because that was the only best practice that was attributable to a real person.
Awesome. No, I think it was the photo of just a couple of different ads and like images put together. So
no, that was all real. That was like a real person's Instagram feed.
Love that. Okay. And then from Yishan Wong, do you think influencer collab posts work well in ads, or are they not worth the time, effort, money invested relative to using like a brand's own photos? Oh, thanks, Jess.
So I think it depends. Like, what I've seen is the traditional, like, hey guys, just got this free product, I'm so obsessed, like, let me walk you through it. that doesn't work as well because people know it's like a paid for post. But if you find an influencer or creator who's just like good at striking that balance between making something look appealing and also making it look off the cuff and real, then like using them almost as an extension of your creative team to do little like mini shoots around products and running those assets, that can be really effective. And also, if you are able to whitelist, like if you do get a good piece of content and you're able to whitelist it through the influencer's account, that can be like it will just lower your costs because people don't immediately put it in the ad category mentally.
Gotcha. I love that. And then we did have a comment from Brian Jacquez, who has taken a bunch of notes, just said really big thank you for this. At Kate and Lane, they're fashion, but they're baby fashion, which I guess is like 90% similar to other brands, but has a super interesting twist. Do you have any tips on what they could do with Kate and Lane for making baby fashion ads exciting?
Yes, but I'd have to see the product. Like, if it is it truly like newborns? Is it like newborn all the way up? I mean, like the answer is kind of yes, but it's hard to just give you a blanket advice that would apply to every kids fashion brand without knowing more.
Got it. Awesome. Well, that makes total sense. And we are going to call it for this session. But thank you so much, Alexandra. That was amazing. You did great. And everybody has your Twitter handle in order to contact you, I believe.